Have you ever been talking to a man? Everything feels amazing, the chemistry is real, the connection seems effortless, and then suddenly his behavior shifts. He pulls back a little. He becomes more observant. He watches how you react to things you didn't even know mattered. Most women think, did I do something wrong? But here's the truth, almost no one tells you didn't do anything wrong. He's testing you. Not in a manipulative way, not to play games, and not to confuse you. But because for a man, choosing the woman he wants to invest in is a deeply emotional yet calculated decision. And before he gives his energy, time, loyalty, protection, consistency, and long-term commitment, he wants to know one thing: can I trust her with the real me? This is the moment most women never recognize. It's subtle, it's quiet, it's often hidden underneath normal everyday interactions. But men are paying attention. He's not just listening to your words, he's observing your patterns, he's feeling your energy. He's seeing how you respond to pressure, to boundaries, to small disappointments, to honesty, to vulnerability. And here's the part that surprises most women. Men don't test you because they're unsure about you. They test you because they're considering choosing you. The testing phase only happens when you've already stood out. In this video, we're going to break down every major test men use, tests you've probably experienced without even knowing it. Once you understand these patterns, you'll stop feeling confused, stop overthinking, and start seeing men's behavior with total clarity. By the end, you'll know exactly what these tests mean, why they happen, and how to respond in a way that makes him think, she's different, and I can't lose her. When a man starts to genuinely like a woman, something shifts inside him, something most women never notice. On the surface, he may seem relaxed, confident, or even casual. But internally, he's quietly evaluating whether this connection is something he can emotionally invest in long term. Men test women because commitment for them isn't just emotional. It's also instinctual, practical, and deeply tied to their sense of identity. A man knows that choosing the wrong partner affects every part of his life: his peace, his goals, his finances, his mental stability, his future family, and even how he sees himself. So when a man is attracted to you, he doesn't just ask, do I like her? He also asks, is she consistent? Is she real? Will she add peace or chaos to my life? Can I trust her with the version of me that isn't perfect? Men aren't always great at expressing fears or insecurities verbally, so their evaluation shows up in subtle behaviors, observing how you handle misunderstandings, noticing whether your words match your actions, paying attention to your emotional tone when you're frustrated, or seeing how you respond when things don't go your way. These aren't tricks, they're instinctive ways of determining if you're emotionally safe. Testing is also a man's way of protecting his heart. Most men have experienced rejection, betrayal, or disconnection in ways they rarely talk about. So when he meets a woman who stands out, he becomes more cautious, not because he doubts her value, but because he wants to ensure he's placing his trust in the right person. Another reason men test is to see if the connection can handle real life, not just the honeymoon stage. Anyone can be sweet when things are easy. Men want to know if you can stay grounded, kind, respectful, and emotionally aware, even when the moment isn't perfect. What most women don't realize is that his testing isn't a sign of uncertainty, it's a sign of interest. Men don't test women they don't care about, they test the woman they're genuinely considering choosing above everyone else. One of the first things a man quietly evaluates when he starts getting serious about a woman is her consistency. Not perfection, not flawlessness, consistency. This doesn't mean being the same every day or suppressing emotions. It means seeing whether the way you show up aligns with who you say you are. Men pay attention to patterns, often unconsciously, because patterns tell them more about a woman's character than her words ever could. Early on, a man might test this without even realizing he's doing it. He watches how you communicate from one day to the next. Are you warm and engaging one day but cold and distant the next, without explanation? He notices if your expectations shift dramatically depending on your mood. He observes whether you can express your needs calmly, or if everything turns into unnecessary conflict. A man who's thinking long-term wants to know if the energy he feels today is the energy he can trust tomorrow. This consistency check also shows up in smaller, seemingly insignificant moments. If you say you value honesty, do you respond openly when something bothers you, or do you give the silent treatment? If you say you want a mature, healthy relationship, do your behaviors reflect that maturity even when you're irritated or stressed? If you talk about respect, do you communicate with respect when emotions are high? Men also look at how consistent you are with yourself. Do you maintain your interests, boundaries, and standards, or do they disappear the moment you like someone? A woman whose identity remains intact is deeply attractive to a man who wants a stable, long-term partner. When he sees that you don't abandon your values for attention, he realizes you're not performing for him, you're being yourself. And that authenticity gives him emotional safety. Another key part of this test is how you handle emotional shifts. Men don't mind mood changes. What they pay attention to is whether those shifts are predictable and rooted in communication, or whether they're chaotic and unpredictable. A man evaluating you for commitment wants peace, not perfection. He wants emotional steadiness, not emotional suppression. Most women don't know this, but a man decides how far he will go with you based on whether your actions match your energy over time. The consistency check isn't about passing or failing, it's about showing him that what he sees is real. When he feels that reliability, that steadiness, he begins to trust you in a way that makes him think, I can build something with her. When a man is deciding whether to choose a woman for something serious, one of the biggest factors he evaluates, often without consciously realizing it, is emotional safety. For many men, emotional safety is the difference between a relationship they can truly open up in and one they have to guard themselves in. And most women don't realize that a man is constantly scanning for this safety long before he ever confesses feelings. Men evaluate emotional safety first by observing how you respond to vulnerability. It may not look like vulnerability on the surface. He might tell you a small insecurity, mention something about his past, or admit a weakness. He's not looking for advice or judgment. He's watching your tone, your expression, your willingness to listen. If you respond with empathy, neutrality, or curiosity, he feels more comfortable showing more of himself. But if you criticize, minimize, or use the moment against him later, he shuts down quickly. Every man has learned, sometimes the hard way, that not every woman can hold his truth gently. A man also checks emotional safety by noticing how you behave when you're upset. Everyone gets emotional, but not everyone handles emotions with care. If you get angry and suddenly insult him, compare him to other men, or use his flaws as weapons, he registers that as emotional danger. A man cannot truly love a woman he feels he has to defend himself from. But if you can express frustration without attacking him, communicating your feelings rather than punishing him, he feels an emotional stability that is rare and deeply attractive. Another element men pay close attention to is how safe they feel in conflict. Men aren't afraid of disagreements, they're afraid of chaos. He's noticing if you can talk through issues rather than escalate them. He's watching whether you're willing to hear his side, or if disagreements turn into power struggles. When he feels that conflict with you leads to resolution rather than destruction, he subconsciously marks you as someone he can build a future with. Finally, men evaluate whether you create an environment where they don't have to constantly perform. A woman who accepts his flaws without trying to control or fix him becomes someone he associates with peace. And peace to a man is one of the strongest forms of emotional safety he can experience. When a man begins seriously considering a woman as someone he could commit to, one of the most revealing things he pays attention to is her level of independence. Not the kind of independence that pushes him away or tries to prove she doesn't need anyone, but the healthy, grounded independence that shows she has her own identity, her own rhythm, and her own life outside of him. This test isn't about trying to see if she can live without him. It's about seeing if she loses herself the moment she likes someone. Men naturally gravitate toward women who maintain their personal world. He notices whether you still prioritize your hobbies, your friendships, your goals, and your self-care routines, or whether all of those things fade the second he gives you attention. When a woman abandons her life too quickly, a man subconsciously worries that she's seeking emotional dependence rather than partnership. But when you continue living your life with fullness and purpose, he sees maturity and strength. It tells him that you want him, not that you need a relationship to feel whole. He also observes how you respond when he needs space or time alone. Men often recharge differently than women, They may need moments of quiet, focus, or solitude. When you don't panic, overthink, or assume the worst, he feels a sense of freedom with you. That freedom is rare, and it's one of the biggest reasons a man chooses one woman over another. A man wants to know he can take care of himself without it being misinterpreted as rejection. This test also shows up when plans fall through, or when he becomes busy. Some women react with insecurity, thinking his busyness means disinterest. But the woman who remains calm and continues her own activities sends a very powerful message. She trusts him, she trusts herself, and she trusts the connection. That emotional steadiness is deeply attractive. Another quiet part of this test is how you handle your dreams and ambitions. A man pays attention to whether you pursue your goals with passion, or whether you expect him to be your sole source of fulfillment. When he sees you moving with purpose, he sees a partner, not a passenger. And men invest deeply in women who inspire them, not pressure them. In his mind, independence is a green flag because it shows that a relationship with you will add to his life, not consume it. And that realization makes him take you more seriously than you may ever realize. One of the most crucial moments in the early stages of a connection is when a man sets a boundary, even a small one. This is when he becomes incredibly observant, not to judge you, not to control you, but to understand how emotionally safe and mature the dynamic will be with you. Men pay very close attention to your reaction because boundaries reveal more about a person's character than compliments or chemistry ever could. When a man sets a limit, needs space, or expresses a preference, he's not testing your obedience, he's watching how you handle discomfort, difference, and personal autonomy. He notices whether you respect his boundaries without turning them into evidence that he's losing interest. For many men, the biggest fear isn't being rejected, it's being suffocated. So when he says he needs time to focus on work, or he wants to keep certain routines intact, or he's not ready to move too fast, your response tells him exactly what kind of emotional environment he would have with you. If you react with guilt-tripping, anger, or passive-aggressive behavior, he immediately senses emotional danger. But if you respond with understanding and grace, he sees you as someone who can handle real intimacy. A man also observes whether you take boundaries personally. He wants to feel free to say no to a plan, express a preference, or share a limit without fearing backlash. If every boundary he sets turns into a battle, he learns to pull back. But if you can hear "not right now" or "I need time to myself" without spiraling into insecurity, you stand out from the women who make everything about themselves. He also evaluates whether you have your own boundaries. Men trust women who communicate their standards calmly and consistently. A woman who has boundaries and respects his feels balanced, not demanding. She knows who she is, and she knows what she needs. When he sees that you're capable of giving space and receiving space, of saying no and hearing no, he realizes you're someone he can communicate honestly with. Ultimately, how you respond to boundaries tells a man whether the relationship will feel like a partnership or a pressure chamber. And once he feels that he can be himself without walking on eggshells, he begins seeing you not just as someone he enjoys, but as someone he could build something meaningful with. As a connection deepens, a man begins paying attention to small details that help him understand whether long-term compatibility is truly possible. These checks aren't dramatic or obvious, they happen in moments so subtle you might not even realize they're meaningful. But to him, they reveal whether your lives could blend smoothly or whether the relationship would be filled with friction. Men don't always articulate these thoughts, but internally, they're constantly comparing how your values, habits, and rhythms align with theirs. One of the first subtle checks he makes involves communication style. He notices how you express your thoughts. Do you speak directly or expect him to read your mind? Do you communicate with clarity or emotion-first intensity? A man who wants a real partnership pays attention to whether he feels understood or confused, calm or overwhelmed. It's not about who's right, it's about whether your natural styles complement or clash. Another quiet compatibility check shows up in daily routines and lifestyle preferences. He observes how you manage stress, how you treat yourself, how you handle responsibilities, and how you navigate small frustrations. He's paying attention to whether your habits align with the kind of life he sees himself living in the future. When he sees similarities or compatible differences, he feels a sense of ease. When everything feels like an adjustment, he hesitates. He also watches how you treat other people. This is one of the deepest indicators for him. How do you talk about friends? How do you speak to service workers? How do you behave when you're annoyed or impatient? Men notice these moments because they reveal the heart of a person. If he sees kindness, patience, and fairness, he imagines what kind of partner you'd be in the long run. If he sees disrespect, entitlement, or cruelty, he wonders how that energy might eventually be directed toward him. Even your sense of humor becomes a quiet test. Shared laughter is one of the strongest signals of compatibility for men. If he can joke with you, relax around you, and feel understood without over-explaining, he feels an emotional harmony that's rare. Most importantly, he evaluates how your values align, your views on commitment, lifestyle choices, money, family, and personal growth. He doesn't need you to be identical, but he needs to feel that you're moving in the same direction. When these subtle checks line up, he begins seeing a future. And once a man sees a future, he starts choosing you in the present. When a man is truly deciding whether to choose you over other women, he often begins comparing, not in a superficial competitive way, but in a deeper, instinctive sense. He's trying to understand who genuinely aligns with him, who brings peace rather than pressure, and who feels like someone he can build a stable, meaningful partnership with. The comparison isn't about looks or status. It's about connection, character, and emotional security. And although he may never say it out loud, his behavior changes in subtle ways when he's weighing you against the other possibilities in his life. One of the first signs is increased attentiveness. When a man starts paying closer attention to your reactions, your tone, your reliability, and your emotional stability, it means he's evaluating you carefully. He's comparing how he feels in your presence versus how he feels with others. If he becomes more curious about your habits, your boundaries, your goals, or your day-to-day life, it's because he's trying to determine whether you fit into his world more naturally than the rest. Another sign is when he becomes more protective of the time he spends with you. If he begins prioritizing you, choosing you over social plans, distractions, or casual connections, it means he's realizing the quality of energy he gets from you is different. A man will always make time for the woman who makes him feel grounded, respected, and understood in ways others don't. He may also start sharing more personal thoughts or asking deeper questions. This happens when he's measuring emotional intimacy. He wants to know who he can trust, who listens without judgment, and who he feels safe being real with. If he opens up more with you than with other women, it's a clear sign he's comparing emotional depth and you're coming out ahead. You'll notice he becomes more consistent too. Men naturally invest more effort into the woman they see as the strongest match. More communication, more presence, more thoughtful gestures. That shift isn't random, it's his way of slowly eliminating the other options. Finally, a subtle but powerful sign is when he begins imagining you in future scenarios. He compares who makes him feel excited about the future and who makes him question it. When you become the woman he thinks of in those imagined moments, that's when the comparison ends and the choice becomes clear. Passing a man's tests is not about performing, pretending, or following scripted behaviors. In fact, the moment you start trying too hard, you fail the test. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stepped out of your authenticity. Men are far more perceptive than most people assume. They can sense when you're being genuine, and when you're adjusting yourself out of fear, insecurity, or desperation. The real key to passing his tests is staying rooted in who you are, regardless of how much you like him. When a man pulls back slightly, or becomes more observant, most women panic. They over-explain, over-text, over-pursue, or overthink. But the woman who passes his tests is the one who stays calm and continues her life. She doesn't chase reassurance. She creates reassurance within herself. She doesn't rush him. She respects his pace. She doesn't go silent to punish him. She communicates when something matters. This emotional steadiness is what men interpret as confidence, and confidence is magnetic. Another way to effortlessly pass his tests is to respond to his boundaries with maturity. If he says he needs time to focus or space to recharge, simply acknowledging it without emotional explosions or passive-aggressive comments tells him everything he needs to know. It shows that you are secure, balanced, and not dependent on his constant attention to feel valued. That alone sets you apart from most women he has met. Consistency also plays a major role. You don't need to be perfect, but you do need to be reliable. If you say you value honesty, then show honesty. If you want respect, give respect. If you desire emotional openness, be emotionally open yourself. When your actions align with your intentions, he sees you as someone he can trust long term. And perhaps the most powerful way to pass his tests is by maintaining your independence. Continue growing, investing in yourself, spending time with your friends, and pursuing your goals. A man is drawn to a woman who has her own purpose, not one who makes him her whole world. Your independence tells him that choosing you enhances his life rather than constricts it. Ultimately, passing his tests is about showing him that you are emotionally safe, self-assured, and authentic. When he feels that being with you doesn't require walking on eggshells, bending his truth, or sacrificing his peace, he naturally moves closer, and that's when he stops testing and starts choosing. The moment a man decides you're the one often comes quietly, subtly, and without fanfare. It's not always announced with grand gestures or declarations of love. Sometimes it's reflected in his consistency, his calm, and the way he naturally integrates you into his life. By this point, he has observed your patterns, your emotional responses, your boundaries, and your independence. He's compared you to others, consciously or subconsciously, and he's mentally checked off the traits that matter most to him in a long-term partner. One of the first signs that a man has mentally placed you in the chosen category is that he stops testing you in the way he once did. The subtle evaluations, the small experiments, the moments where he watches for reactions, all of that fades. He no longer needs to see if you are trustworthy or consistent. He already knows. Instead, his energy shifts toward building, planning, and protecting the connection. He invests without hesitation because he believes the relationship is worth it. Another indication is his long-term thinking. When he imagines the future, you're in it. Whether it's planning trips, considering life goals, or even casually discussing family and values, his mind automatically includes you. Men often visualize the future in practical, emotional, and lifestyle terms. And when he sees harmony between your life and his, he recognizes that the risk of committing is far outweighed by the rewards. He also becomes protective, not in a controlling way, but in a deeply considerate and loyal way. Your needs, comfort, and emotional safety become priorities. He starts showing consistency in words and actions, ensuring that you feel valued and secure. You'll notice that he communicates more freely, supports your growth, and openly shares his world with you. Finally, when a man decides you're the one, he demonstrates patience and emotional availability. He's willing to face challenges, conflicts, or misunderstandings without fear of losing you because his commitment is rooted in trust, respect, and genuine affection. Choosing you over everyone else doesn't come from pressure, it comes from clarity. He sees your value, your authenticity, and your compatibility, and he knows that being with you is the best decision he can make. This is the stage where testing ends and choosing begins. And when a man reaches this point, you'll notice a sense of calm and certainty in his behavior, a confidence that he has found the woman he truly wants to invest his heart in. As we wrap up, the most important thing to understand is that men's behavior is never random when it comes to choosing a partner. Every subtle test, every moment of observation, and every comparison to other women has a purpose to determine if you are someone he can trust, invest in, and envision a future. Recognizing this allows you to stop overthinking his actions and start seeing them as signals, not doubts. First, remember that his tests are a reflection of interest, not insecurity. If he's attentive, curious about your boundaries, and paying attention to your patterns, it's because he sees potential, not because he doubts your worth. Understanding this changes the way you approach the relationship. You respond from confidence, not fear. Next, focus on authenticity. Trying to pass tests by pretending to be someone you're not will only backfire. Men are instinctively drawn to women who are self-assured, consistent, and emotionally grounded. Being authentic, maintaining your independence, and staying true to your values is the most powerful way to pass any test without overthinking or stress. Respect boundaries, both his and yours. A healthy relationship thrives on mutual respect, and how you handle space, limits, and emotional needs communicates far more than words ever could. A man who feels safe and unpressured is far more likely to choose you over others. Consistency and emotional stability are also key. Demonstrating reliability in your actions and reactions creates trust and peace, which men value more than perfection. Emotional maturity, combined with independence and authenticity, positions you as a woman he can truly commit to. Finally, remember that being chosen is not about chasing validation, it's about creating a connection that aligns naturally with both your lives. Focus on your growth, your goals, and your happiness, and allow the relationship to develop organically. When you understand the psychology behind his tests and respond with clarity, authenticity, and calm, you shift from being just another option to being the woman he sees as the one. By the end of this video, you should feel empowered to recognize his signals, maintain your self-worth, and confidently navigate the early stages of a relationship, knowing exactly how men decide who they choose for the long term.